Good evening, guys. Now, there's been approximately 1,200 murders committed by the Chicago outfit going back to the 1920s, and the vast majority of these murders are unsolved. Today, we're going to talk about just one of those unsolved murders going back to 1987, the murder of BP executive Charles Merriam. He was 52 years old, and he was killed right in front of his house while he was in his pajamas. Now, Merriam was the Midwest executive for Amoco Oil. He controlled over 1,000 gas stations, and his business belief was to have them all operated as full service gas stations. However, they were being pushed out by self-serving mini marts that you see today. This caused him a lot of grief and a lot of aggravation. I'll talk about connections, man. I remember seeing this guy at the old Ditka's. I've seen him at the bar at Orso's, a few of the festivals. There's Frank Mulatto. This guy was in tight with all the wise guys, most of the politicians, all the Chicago cops from the brass down. He owned several restaurants, several hot bars, gas stations, service stations in the city. Now here's Charles Merriam, Amoco executive, and he had a lot of beef with Frank Melito. When Melito got pinched, Merriam started taking some of his gas stations, and this infuriated Frank Melito. They got in very heated verbal conversations, and he knew he had problems now. Now, Chuck Merriam's son, he said that two men dressed up as Chicago police officers were the shooters, the men that killed his father. They were paid $6,000 apiece, and he believes this was sanctioned by the Chicago outfit. This has been an open case till today and an unsolved murder. Now, most of us know who these guys are, the two mob cops that were working for a gas pipe out of New York City. Well, I guess we had some of that going on in Chicago as well. According to Merriam's son, two men dressed as Chicago police officers approached his father, who was in pajama pants, and shot him and killed him. Allegedly, each cop was paid $6,000 apiece to carry out the hit. Now, going back to November 1984, Merriam was approached in front of his home by two men dressed in Chicago police uniforms. They shot and killed him multiple times. Here they're taking away his dead body. And a few days prior to the murder, he asked his executives for special security because he feared for his life. Now, they tried to give Frank Mulatto many times, but they can never really get him on tape or anybody to cooperate against him. However, they did pinch him on tax evasion. He tried to hide $2.5 million. He also had a $300,000 fine he never paid. So they charged him and his two sons, and he was given 16 years in jail and lost a lot of his businesses. Here's Frank Melito out on bond, walking into the Dirksen Federal Building. This guy was a highly connected North Side businessman. He had ties to the Chicago outfit, all your politicians, cops. He was a casino investor and a two-time felon. This gentleman was the prime suspect in the Merriam murder. Now, in 1986, when Mulatto and two of his sons were convicted on tax evasion, Merriam started to take over his gas stations, infuriating Mulatto. He was livid. They had heated exchanges, and I think that was the ultimate motive in his killing. Now, as the detectives were trying to build a case against Frank Melito, it was near impossible because he was so well politically connected, not only with the mayor, the alderman, but most of the police brass as well. And he refused to cooperate on this case, and he refused to take a lie detector's test. Till this day, this case remains unsolved. Now, Frank Melito was the prime suspect in the Chuck Merriam hit. The motive was obvious. He had the guys that are capable, as well as the police cover-up. His son believes 100% that Melito has something to do with his father's murder. Now here's one of Chicago's finest, disgraced ex-Chicago cop, Ray D. Silvestro. He was allegedly one of the men dressed up as a cop, along with Mario Ranoni, who shot and killed Chuck Merriam for $6,000. He failed the lie detector test and denied all charges and eventually moved out to Vegas. Now here's top Chicago enforcer Mario Ranoni. I spoke about him a few times. I've seen him in court at the Gus Alex trial. I also seen him on a gun charge where Joe Lopez represented him. Mario Ranoni was the prime suspect in this case. He was one of the men dressed as a Chicago police officer that was responsible for killing Charles Merriam. Mario's never been charged, but he's the prime suspect. Now here's two of Frank Melito's very close friends, going way back, ex-mayor Richie Daley and police chief Matt Rodriguez. These guys are the best of friends. They used to go on vacations together, work all the sweetheart contracts, but they were all smart enough to step down before any of them actually got indicted or pinched. But very powerful friends of Frank Melito. Now, Frank Melito owns several gas stations and several service centers throughout the city. He also had the sweetheart contract where he maintained and serviced most of the Chicago police cars and city vehicles. A few years ago, he got pinched along with two of his sons for owing over $300,000 in unpaid taxes. And he blamed Charles Merriam for his indictment. Now here's one of the many great Italian restaurants in Chicago, right there in the wonderful Old Town neighborhood on Wells Street, called Orso's. This place has been around for years. Frank Melito has a silent partnership in this restaurant. And occasionally you would see Frank in here with all his friends holding court. Now, shortly after the family secrets trial was over, there was a lot of buzz and talk that there was going to be more indictments, that there could potentially be a family secrets 2, maybe discussing no-nos, the Chuck Merriam murder, the Nick Lococo murder, and the missing of the unsolved murder of Tony Zizzo and others. What do you guys think?